It is Friday night. We are at the bar. The bar is now officially open.
Yeah, because I'm here.
Donna is back.
I'm back.
Donna's back. Wait, look, there she is.
Where am I? Oh, too quick.
Oh, it's so nice to have her back because I'm telling you, doing this show now without her is torture. It really is. I mean, I love the comments and the questions. I love it.
And you thought living with me was torture.
I know.
Wow.
But it's so hard. I mean, everybody knows. Like, we were doing the open mic nights, and I was getting so far behind with questions. But now it's so... Donna's here. So everything will be fine. And we have a guest tonight. I am so excited. I can't wait, because it's been a while since I talked to our guest tonight, and I'm so excited. I can't wait to get into some weird shit.
We got lots of people popping up.
All right, so let me go over the rules. I got to find my rules. I'm so discombobulated here. Here we go. So rule number 1 is you are welcome to ask questions, because that's the point of the show. That's what we do. We ask questions. We learn. We don't learn. If we, for instance, rule number 2, we don't know everything, we look it up and we try to figure out what's going on. And sometimes we learn together, which is great. Yeah. I love doing that.
It's cool like that.
It is cool like that.
Cool like that.
Cool. So rule number 3 is that we follow the Patrick Swayze rule here and be nice. So you can be in the chat room and you're welcome to discuss and debate, and you can disagree. That's cool. But just don't devolve into name calling and a lot of other crap like that. Because if you do, Donna's back. She will boot you. She will boot your ass right out of the chat room, and you'll never return. You're like down the black hole.
Once you're done, once you're booted, man,
you're done.
Yeah, make up another name.
Only when we like you, it takes us hours to figure out.
I know, right? Yeah.
Come back in.
Yeah, it's not worth it if you're not on the good list. So make sure you think you're on the good list before you.
If you have a question tonight, and because we have a guest, we're going by standard routine is that the first hour, I get to talk to the guest for the hour.
Yes,
and then we'll take our pee break. And then when we come back, we'll get into your questions. But if you do have a question, feel free to put it up there. But remember to put a Q in front of your comment. That way Donna sees it easier and we can save it for later. And then the last one, of course, is my favorite rule, is to drink up.
Drink up, man. I got my water.
Her water bottle.
I got my water tonight, and it is water.
All right, so we're gonna bring on our guest, and you've been hearing her giggle once in a while in the background. So I'm just gonna bring her on, and we're gonna get into this. Hey, Sharon.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome.
It is so nice to see you.
It's great to be back.
Yeah. When's the last
time? To be back in the circle here? Very nice. Happy to be here.
When's the last time that we? I think. What was it?
There was a speaker,
right?
Yeah,
outside
I think we were down in DC.
You spoke to the skeptics down there, and the group.
Yeah, and then shit hit the fan, and it's been crappy. I mean, I haven't been to a conference or any event for, I don't know, 5 years now.
Wow,
something like that.
Well, yeah, and then with COVID, that kind of pushed everything off too. It kind of sucked.
Exactly. But I'm happy to be here. It's great to see you.
I am happy. I love your shirt. Commented when you came on. It was awesome. Look at that. The Jersey Devil. Love
still
it.
roaming the Pine Barrens in people's imagination, right?
He's still there.
Absolutely.
Jersey Devil is my favorite cryptid. Absolutely my favorite. And I don't know why, but I just love the idea of like an amalgamation of weird things. And it's so bizarre that it's obviously not a real animal, that and the story surrounding it is even like weirder. The truth is even weirder than the fiction, probably. So I love it.
Yeah, it's, you know what? I mean, I've been to the Pine Barrens once, and that was because I was supposed to meet a ghost hunting group of all things to go on an adventure, and I got lost.
That's easy to do.
Yeah. So I ended up not going, but Jersey's right across the bridge. It's only, I think, the
20
Pine
minutes
Barrens
away.
are like 20,
I don't know where
away.
the Pine Barrens. There's a lot of different areas, right, that are considered
it's huge.
the Barrens.
It's huge out there, right?
We usually go to the Jersey Shore through the Pine Barrens. You can go a number of different ways, but if you go like down through South Jersey, you will drive through the Pine Barrens, and you can't miss it. I mean, it's just
we just don't realize that it's that.
Yeah, right.
That we're driving through.
Really big. Yeah.
All right, so. Let's start off by if people don't know who you are, and they really should, because I talked about you quite a few times on the show because you're one of the people that I've looked up to over the years, and I've gotten a lot of influence from you. So I name drop you all the time. No, I'm kidding. I hate name dropping. But when
like
serious
Ben
work comes up
Radford, Bob, Tiffany.
and stuff comes up, I talk about your work all the time. And so for people that don't know who you are, what's your origin story? How did you get into all this weird stuff?
Wow. Like probably a dozen people will tell you they've always been interested in weird stuff and paranormal things since they've been little. I mean, I remember when I was in elementary school, always hitting the 001 section of the library and pulling out those books on ghosts and monsters and UFOs and things like that. So I've always been interested in it. And then you go through higher education and you start to think about things in a different way. And I took a science track. I'm a geoscientist, and didn't think about it much when I was in college because I was busy. And then after I got out and I didn't have a job for a summer, and I'm looking up stuff to read, and I started getting into more of that again, and then going into the skeptical literature for the first time and realizing that there was a lot more that I never heard of. The skeptical literature was something that wasn't really available as much as the believer stuff was available.
Right.
That was all over the place.
Right.
And I started reading this stuff and thought, wow, this is actually a little bit scientific, quite enlightening. And I really enjoyed it. And then I got in touch with some other people. I think Ben Radford was one of the first people that I met in person when I went down to the Philly area and saw him give a talk on lake monsters, and started picking up the books and getting involved in Skeptical Inquirer, especially for young people at the time. That's what I enjoyed doing. And then I started my own blog. The internet just made it available to everybody to put their views out there, whatever those views were. And I learned so much, and I met so many great people. Just so many great people, and some not so great people. When you first go into these forums in the internet, so that was 1993, 1992, 1993, something like that, when you first got access to these Usenet forums or email listservs, right? That everybody was on.
I remember getting into like bulletin board systems.
So I would go on to dinosaurs, ghosts, and paranormal stuff. And in the dinosaur room, I met Dr. Darren Naish, who I'm still, acquaintances with now. And, I edited his podcast, and we're still friends, and we talk and stuff like that. I've never met him, but and then I met a whole pile of UFO people on the UFO forums virtually, and then a whole lot of ghosty people on those ghost forums. And then, I ended up shifting my view to a more skeptical view and started to do writing in that viewpoint. And sometimes, that creates a little conflict. And I tended to disagree with some of the people that I had previously been associated with, especially in the cryptozoology community. I'm not going to name names. People can guess. And they could go online and they could see who I've argued with online.
Right.
and have made some there's a couple disputes that still exist. Right. And it's a little uncomfortable, but so I've really gone to both sides of the issue, whatever the issue may be. I've been to both sides. I've been on the believer side, and I've been on the very skeptical side. And I tend to swing wildly in both directions. And right now, where I am is very strictly in the middle. So that's what I kind of, left a little bit for a while.
Right.
And started a different blog, started something a little bit different, the spooky geology thing, which we can talk about later. And laid low for a little while. So I'm back stirring the pot a little bit now.
Yay!
Yay! I love it. I'm so glad, because I loved all the work. The Doubtful News. I mean, I was loved it. It was one of my go-to websites all the time. I went there, and then when you did the 15 Credibility Street, I was like, this is great. This is fun. I think I got to be on it once.
Yeah.
it was fun. It was fun because I love the information and I love the weirdness, because it wasn't just the standard ghosts and cryptids. It was just all kinds of weird stuff you would bring up.
Anomalous natural phenomenon is my favorite thing. I'm kind of done with the ghost stuff. When it comes to people having ghost stories, I'm kind of tired of that. I'm actually tired of the people telling me, you know, they've had Bigfoot encounters or something like that. I'm more interested in the stuff that is actually true anomalies that might have something to tell us. So, you know, we'll get into the fish story, and I'm really interested in things like earth lights, and I did quite a bit of research on earthquake lights, which nobody had ever really talked about from a geologic aspect. And I don't know how this happened, but this is a great story. This is one of my crowning achievements. Somebody contacted me from NASA Goddard Center.
Ooh.
And said, can you please come and talk to us about earthquake lights? And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I am not an expert in this. And they said, no, this is one of the topics that the people at NASA want to hear about. And I'm like, that's really weird. So luckily they gave me a heck of a lot of lead time, and I was able to do really extensive research, everything that was out there regarding the geophysics of earthquake lights and what might be the cause of them, and if they were really credible and the best cases, so to speak. And I went and I talked to NASA Goddard Center, which is in Greenbelt, Maryland. And I was nervous as hell, right? In front of all these astrophysicists. And I got a great reception. They were fantastic, and they were really wonderful, and they were curious. And I think they really thought that I was credible, which I felt like I was, because I was just using really the best information that I had.
Right.
And that just kind of buoyed me up. And I felt really good that this is probably a good track to be on. Something that somebody hadn't done was talk about the intersection of geology and spooky, weird ideas. So that's where I am now.
I love that. I can relate because whenever I've been asked to speak in front of like a more of a skeptical or humanist, or, you know, not, you've talked in front of believers, like groups of believers and groups of more academics or skeptics and science people, and it's different. It's definitely different, hugely different. So I feel the same way the first couple times, and even now. I mean, I'm still nervous because it's like the jokes that I would say at like a paranormal conference don't work at all.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's fine. And I would try them, and like everybody's just staring at me. I'm like, damn.
Have you ever talked to a Mensa conference?
No, I'm not.
That is
smart enough for that.
Super intimidating.
I'm sure.
That's the most skeptical audience you will ever get.
So, what are these earth lights? What are earthquake lights? What can you tell us about them? Because now I'm curious.
So there's a lot packed into the idea of earth lights. It's often talked about in the context of ghosts. Historically, things like spirit lights, spirit paths, where the spirits would travel to their final resting place, and they would take the form of lights. And then there's also the idea of earth lights as earth energy. So it's kind of that 70s vibe of earth energy.
So I'm going to interject real quick. We have a tradition here that when the word energy is used in the wrong context, you know, either describing it or when people say energy, we have to drink.
Oh, and we want to know what you're drinking tonight.
Oh, yeah.
This is watermelon wheat. I don't remember the name of the
watermelon wheat.
Yeah, watermelon wheat beer.
That sounds amazing.
That sounds good.
I've had better. I've had a better watermelon wheat, which is from the Cape May. No, that was a cranberry. Cape May Brewing Company.
Oh yeah, it's right around the corner from my aunt.
That's a very good label. I really like their stuff.
I'll have to go there.
This is not that. It's okay.
All right. So earth lights again.
Okay. So I won't say the E word again.
I'm sure it'll come up.
You need to. People do need to drink throughout the show.
It's okay. I don't mind.
Earth lights, again, so very new agey idea of earth lights. So people were seeing will-o'-the-wisps, or they were seeing balls of light. And sometimes ball lightning is also, it's hard to discern what could be ball lightning, or what people describe as ball lightning, or what could be earth lights, what could be earthquake lights, which are balls of light that could come manifest as part of a fault zone. That's how people are reporting them, or appear before or during an earthquake.
Okay.
And that's just, to me, when I started researching that is a whole box that I had to take and put in a separate container and look at separately, because that is a very different thing. Earth lights also manifested as sort of these ideas where people would just be walking and all of a sudden see this ball of light follow them, or rise up over a mountain, or appear over mountains, or appear over a fault zone. Like Hessdalen in Norway is a well-known area of earth lights. And they were often confused with UFOs, or people would conflate them with UFOs. This would be a UFO because it was a mysterious light, but it took the form of a ball that followed them. So you can see that you can get all sort of conflations in here. Is it a ghost? Is it a UFO? Is it ball lightning? And the person who did, I think, the best work on it was Paul Devereaux, and he wrote for 40 Times. He's still alive. I talked to him a very little bit when I was doing work on earthquake lights. And he wrote a book on earth lights. Earth Lights Revelations was the one that I had. And it was fantastic. I just loved it. I loved everything about it. This was my zone. I was in the zone when I was talking about earth lights, because it encompassed everything that I was ever interested in. And I haven't done enough work on that. I wanted to do more on earth lights with relation to geology, but I only did that whole section on earthquake lights because they are very different. They can take the form of sheets, or curtains, or things that look like the aurora, or glows, or flashes, just a lot of different things. And I actually found that, personally, I feel, and other people will disagree with me, that there may be something to this. There may be electrically charged particles that are released in certain fault zones in certain areas that do create the phenomenon of earthquake lights. And it ends up being a release of ionized air from the ground that may create what is like a glowing area above a fault line. And in some cases, it may manifest as a ball that travels down the fault line as that energy is released. I used it in the correct way.
You used it in the correct, yes.
But from my research, and this is just me just scratching the surface of this, not as an expert in geophysics at all, but having some ability to dig through the jargon that happens in these scientific articles. It really felt like there, in very specific circumstances, there may be an indication of this type of luminous phenomenon related to earthquakes. I can't prove it. I'm open to more information, and the darn stuff is hard to track.
Okay.
You don't know when the fault's going to break. If they end up putting out sensors to pick up like radio waves or ionized air or anything, where are you going to put them? Where's the fault going to break? It's just really, really hard to monitor. So that's why we don't get it. Similar to ball lightning. People disagree with me that ball lightning is a thing. I think it's probably a thing, but it's very rare. So those anomalous natural phenomena, that's my jam. I love that stuff.
And the issue is, as you brought up, it's not predictable. Some of this stuff is just, it's so out there, and we have no idea what creates it, if it creates it. So is there footage? I doubt it. Is there any footage that you know of?
No, there isn't. There's a lot that is said to be earthquake lights that isn't. It's transformers exploding.
Okay.
So what happens when an earthquake occurs,
right.
particularly in places like Japan or New Zealand, the transformers blow, and you get this because they're shaken and the wires disconnect, and you get this blue flash. And some people will say that is earthquake lights, and it's probably not. It's probably the transformers or the electrical arcs happening because the wires are touching each other. So we can't really confirm that. I'd like to see more evidence of earthquake lights before an earthquake happens. So you're getting the pre-stresses happening at that site where the fault is being really crushed and pressed with the pressure before it actually slips. And that's what I would like to see. Somebody report earthquake lights prior to the actual event. Right. And that has happened in Italy in particular, in Canada in particular. There was a great case that was well documented. No video. I mean, it was the time before people really had their phones handy. So maybe someday. And we can talk about that in the context of another anomalous natural phenomenon that we actually did catch on video just very recently.
Yes.
Let's we have a quick question. Quick question in the chat.
Hey, Aaron, what's up, buddy? What do you think about the Brown Mountain Lights in North Carolina?
That I have the book, right? It's sitting right there. The Brown Mountain Lights, and I have several papers on it that are sitting here too. It's, again, a subject I really need to dig into. I'm really fascinated by that. I think there's a lot of mistaken observations of the Brown Mountain Lights, but I'm wondering if there really isn't something going on there. Same with Hessdalen. There seems to be this, with Hessdalen in Norway, there's a mountain and then there's a valley, and interesting scenarios coming up there where you're dealing with some metals in the groundwater and in the rock that could actually be generating some sort of simple battery, very simple natural battery. I'm just throwing this stuff out there. I have no idea if this really has any basis, in fact, but things that I've heard that I'm like, I kind of like to think about that a little bit more. Brown Mountain Lights, there's a lot of observations there, and unfortunately, none of the research has really panned out. So I'm going to get into that eventually.
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about raining fish. I totally want to do it's raining fish.
Hallelujah.
So
actually, we did have a little hallelujah moment when we saw the video that we have of the fish falling to the ground and hitting the ground. So should I start at the beginning?
Yes, that's a very good place to start.
That's a very good place to start. So I have to bring in Paul Cropper. Paul Cropper is my friend and acquaintance and colleague from Australia, Sydney, Australia. And when I got sort of stranded in Sydney, Australia a number of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, he and his wife were like, you can come and stay at our house for 2 nights. And I was just like so grateful. And he took me around. He took me to the Blue Mountains, and we looked for the yowie. You can find the yowie there, but but it was fantastic to be there. And he was just so kind. And he gave me books, and he was always so helpful. In December of last year, he notified me. He says there was a reported fall of fish in Texarkana with the thunderstorm. Texas, Arkansas. Texarkana is on the border of Texas and Arkansas.
Okay.
He said, I'm trying to contact witnesses. I'm trying to get more information, but this looks like a really impressive fish fall. And he had previously looked at one in Texas, in Fulshire, Texas, which is several, 100 miles away from this location. And we worked together on that. And he was disappointed because there were people who said they found the fish in their yards. But eventually he was like, I don't think they fell very far. They might have been blown by the wind from the storm, like out of this pond onto people's yards. Or they might have been dropped by the pelicans that people said were on the pond. And pelicans eat fish, and then the fish were dropped later on. But that sort of gave him an idea of what might be happening in this case as well. So the Texarkana fish fall was when we started plotting out the witnesses and where they were finding fish, because thank you, social media, they were all over the place. They were reporting this everywhere. The news stations were reporting it, so we can get locations of the businesses. I don't know if you know this, or if you have this in your town. You might. The car dealers and the automotive people tend to congregate right along one road.
Yeah, they're all together.
And tire shop and everything. Well, this happens in Texarkana too. So all these car dealerships noted that during the rain, they close their garage doors and they're like, shit, there's fish falling with the rain. And there was at least 3 of them that reported this, and they were all car dealerships or automotive businesses that were right near each other on this Summer Hill Road in Texarkana. And these people were showing up on the news holding fish and gathering buckets full of fish, not just 1 or 2 fish, buckets full, like 30, 40, 50 fish at a time in their lots.
Is it all right if I share the screen or just show the article? Because this is so people get an idea of what we're talking about here. Let's see.
This was not a little deal. This was a big deal. And
wait, there was a picture of a truck.
The picture.
Right? Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow.
So that was when they had picked up the fish. Some of the fish was reported to have fallen in the truck beds.
Wow.
And that was key. And then we started finding actual pictures of people finding fish on their rooftops.
Oh, wow.
And again, that's key, because fish on the ground is
one thing.
Not that impressive. One of the things that we thought about was one of the theories that happens with whenever these incidents occur is the streams of the storm drains just overflowed and the fish ended up stranded in the streets after the heavy rain came through.
Right. Okay.
There's also fish that tend to be in very shallow water and can actually maneuver over wet ground, called walking perch. And they can end up in weird areas too. So we had to eliminate those things. But when we started mapping out the locations, we saw that this is probably a 4 square mile stretch. And we had so many independent witnesses telling us that, yeah, we just saw fish on the ground. They had fallen with the rain. At this point, there was really no doubt that the fish had actually fallen. And that is a huge deal, because this is a Fortean classic phenomenon.
Right.
Charles Fort loved falling fish. It's on the cover of his, the compendium of his books is fish falling. But we never had good evidence that they actually fell, or why. Why did they fall?
And this is a phenomenon that's been reported previously for a long time, right? There's a lot of cases. In some places, it seems to happen fairly regularly, and people don't think a whole lot of it. They just fish fell from the sky again. But there's never been any investigation. Honestly, I would hate to be walking down the sidewalk and all of a sudden, like, oh,
okay,
right in the face.
So a woman in Philadelphia, in the park, was jogging, and she got hit in the head by a trout or something that was this. I
remember that.
He got nailed by a really large fish. Now, in that case, it was dropped from a bird. The bird was flying over. The fish was very heavy. Dropped the bird. Happened to land on the woman. Unfortunately,
wow.
One fish. I mean, in this case, it was probably hundreds of these small fish. Probably, I think it was like 2 to 6 inches. 5, 6 inches was the max. Paul had contacts.
The one picture you had, there's one.
It was like a hand.
So it's like, good, like 5, 6 inches. Yeah.
That's the biggest that was seen. They were all dead. None were frozen. Hail did fall with the storm. So we had a lot to do. So Paul had contacts with the University of Texas at Austin ichthyology department. So the fish people at the university, the diverse biodiversity center. And he got in touch with them and sent them pictures and said, can you identify these fish? And a local woman had collected her fish that she found on her yard And she had also had a video of a very confused bird that was in their neighborhood. And it appeared to be a cormorant, which are very common birds. And the bird was just sort of disoriented in the yard. So we had lots of people picking up samples of their fish, and she had froze some of her samples as well. The University of Texas people eventually did pick up those samples and took those samples, had those samples available. Okay. And they are testing them. Okay. Hopefully they are testing them for bird DNA. And if we get that bird DNA, that'd be something. It appears that they were all the same species of fish, gizzard, shad. And shad are hard to tell apart. They all look alike, but gizzard, shad.
And you're looking for like stomach contents from the birds, right?
Right. So cormorants eat shad. And cormorants are like, they just gulp fish whole, head first. They just grab the fish, gulp them whole, and they will eat them in seconds. I mean, you have to watch the video of cormorants eating fish because it's really amazing how much they take, and they will take a dozen fish at a time within seconds.
Wow.
And cormorants are very messy birds. And one thing we know about cormorants is that when they are stressed or when they have to feed their young, they will regurgitate their food readily.
Okay.
At the same time that we were looking into this, I saw this video fortuitously come up from Holland of people who lived near the canal, and it was filled with cormorants, and they're picking up all these dead fish off their sidewalks because the cormorants, when they fly away, barf up the fish onto their sidewalks. And the people are just like, I'm pissed off. This is disgusting.
Yeah.
And they're picking up the fish. So I showed this to Paul, and we got in touch with that person who in Holland who was an expert on this. Cormorants were eliminated from Holland more or less for a while, and this disappeared. As they're coming back, this is becoming a problem again. The cormorants are leaving these things behind. So now the hypothesis of maybe the cormorants were responsible for this fish fall. Wow. And then we started to hear from key witnesses were the regional airport. So the airport runway, like any other runway, is fenced in. You can't go there. So it's like a restricted area. And there were videos of all the airport workers going out onto the tarmac and picking up buckets of fish.
It just sounds funny.
It was they were having a good time. They had their phones and they were, oh, there's another one. Look at that one. Oh, that's a big one. Put it in the bucket. So we really had well established that the darn fish fell, and that the airport personnel said these cormorants come over frequently, flocks of them. So this appeared to be the best answer, that the flocks of cormorants that had flown maybe from the Wright-Patman Lake, which was 8 miles away, had flown away from the storm front, or chased away from the storm front, lost their fish cookies, and
fish cookies.
Tossed their fish cookies. So it's not a foolproof.
Not a foolproof.
No, it's the best answer we've got.
It sounds like it would happen. I mean, it doesn't sound like.
Is there a reason? I mean, I would assume maybe the thunder or lightning strike would cause the birds to freak.
Birds sense storms as well. So if they're like eating dinner and they sense a storm coming, they're just gonna go flying away.
Yeah, and if they're full of fish and they can't really fly,
what's the first thing you're gonna do?
Yeah. And we don't know why. Yeah. We really don't know why they do that. We could speculate, but cormorant researchers have gotten vomited upon before.
I'm pretty sure it's an occupational hazard.
Look at Bob. It's on a roll.
Bob loves to joke around.
They always wear hats.
Oh, Bob, you're killing me.
Absolutely.
You are killing me.
Oh my god.
So when Paul and I were talking about stuff about the it's modern times. Why isn't there video of this? Did anybody take a video of it? And sure enough, Discount Wheel and Tire Pros in Texarkana were so helpful, and they gave Paul their high definition security footage, and he was able to spot 6 fish falling in their parking lot exactly where they went and picked them up later on. So it's I mean, even though it's HD footage, it is hard to see things during the very heavy rainstorm.
Right.
They fell within just a few minutes. You can see the things falling on the ground. One of them may be just a piece of paper because it's hard to see because of the rain, but the other things are definitely solid objects that are falling on the asphalt. And that was the location that picked up many, many fish, and reportedly the witnesses saw them falling there. So I think we've got pretty good evidence that they really did fall. And this was the first time that we think it was ever captured on video.
That's awesome.
That's cool. That's cool because it's like this phenomenon that we've read about for decades, and at least decades, and it's finally there's a plausible explanation for it with evidence to back it up. That's awesome. I was so excited.
I was really excited too. Unfortunately, not everyone's so excited. I don't know that it's getting, the original story went international. Right. Everybody reported on it. Different countries reported on it. Fish falling from the sky. I put out a press release, and I contacted just the local Texas outlets who originally reported the story about our findings, and they did report it. But it didn't really go farther than that. We'll see if it does. It may. It was just out, earlier this week. So it does take probably around 7 to 10 days for interesting stories to go from small websites, and I know this from my Doubtful News days, to go from small local websites to actually get picked up by major news outlets.
Right.
It takes that long for it to translate to the higher things. And the one thing I don't want to neglect to mention, the typical explanation for fish falls
yes,
are water spouts. And I have to thank Brian Dunning for this. I don't know if he's still on. He was
in there.
Yeah, that jackass was in the chat room.
Me and I, we totally disagree on ball lightning, and we disagree on earthquake lights, but we do agree on water spouts being an absolutely terrible explanation for fish falls or frog falls or whatever. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't happen that way. Water spouts are not, shop vacs that suck out stuff from ponds and dump them miles away. It just doesn't happen that way.
Weird dreams tonight.
I'm gonna slap you with some fish.
That's gonna be my wake up call.
Yeah.
Wet fish right in the face. So a water spout, what causes that?
A water spout is just like a tornado over water.
I've
or a dust devil over water. Yeah. There were no. We were really looking at Wright Patman Lake, which was to the southwest of about 8 miles from Texarkana, because we know that that's where the shad were. Okay. And the storm line traces in that direction. I have to do the opposite here to show like how it was going across the sky, but it wasn't going just east-west. It was going sort of, to the northeast. And there was no water spout reported there. There were no water spouts reported anywhere at that time. It just wasn't a tornadic storm. Okay. So we can completely rule that out. We even did contact the National Weather Service there, and they contacted people at Wright Patman at a campground and said, did you see any weird weather associations there during this time? They said no. So I think we've pretty much covered our bases. No water spout, not a water spout as the cause of this fish fall.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, because that's usually the go-to, the default explanation that is given, and it always baffled me. Like, how big would this water spout have?
I think it would have to be pretty big. It's almost like saying a tornado came over and launched some fish
miles and miles away. I mean,
but why just one kind of fish?
Yeah,
didn't make any sense.
Exactly.
True. Yeah, it should pick up sharks and shit too.
And
like
shark,
some dolphins and whales. Come on.
Or even just the junk,
the crap.
Yeah, the crap that you find in lakes. I would expect not just a few fish,
here and there,
out over 4 square miles or something. I would expect debris. as it picked
like
up
branches and stuff. It would be more like a tornado, not a.
Yeah, and tornadoes tend to blow things like outward.
Yes,
they don't
not drop down.
I don't really think that. I mean, tornadoes have a low pressure system there that does pull things up, but it usually just blows them apart. It doesn't. Right. Yeah, and it tosses things everywhere. So, and it's quite local, and then it will toss lighter things farther away. That's not the pattern we were seeing here.
Right.
So clearly something else is going on. Now, I had people ask me, well, why don't we see this during dry weather? You know, why did it happen during a storm? Why don't we see this more often? I don't know. I think that when we're talking about generally anomalous phenomenon, whether it be fish falls, frog falls, earth lights, whatever, I think you have to have a very unique set of circumstances that it happens. And then if you don't have those unique set of circumstances, it's not going to happen. So these things are going to be rare.
Right.
And unpredictable.
Yeah. Well, first, I mean, you have to have this huge group of birds that are just scattered together.
That are having
and then buffet. It's dinner time. Yeah. What are the odds of a storm coming at the time that the birds are all eating and then having to get up
and scare the shit out of them?
Exactly.
Well, the fish out
so,
of
I
them.
mean...
You got to scare the fish out of them.
Fish cookies.
Oh, I love this show. We have so much fun.
This is awesome. I love this story.
Yeah, so I felt really good about this. I felt really good about doing this. I feel that we've actually accomplished something, even though it was really gross. And I mean, there's this one picture. There's one picture in that I'm glad Paul included of fish just smooshed together into like a teardrop shape, and some of them are all gooey. I don't know if you still have it or not.
That would make it.
Let me see. Yeah, I can show you.
That would make even more sense that they were.
It just looked like
in
this
the belly
blob of stuff that. I'm not sure that it's there. It's not there. No. It's one that I have on my website.
Oh, hold on.
So what I did was I put on the website my own personal observations because people can't always get Fortean Times in the U.S. It's not really a publication you could find on the newsstand. So I didn't want to share the PDF because it's not for me to share. You know, you should go out and buy the
absolutely, yes,
magazine. And we did make the cover, so that was really cool. That was my first cover. I had written for Fortean Times a number of times before. I did write Fortean Times on earthquake lights, but it didn't make the cover. But this was the cover because this was really big news that we let Fortean Times have as original research. So, but there is one picture that is just about 5 or 6 fish all smooshed together in a shape that it's called like a bolus. If the cat throws up a ball.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a cow, regurgitates. Well, this thing was just like, it was just a blob of fish all smooshed together. It was so gross. But
that makes sense. I mean, that's probably the best evidence that you could find because.
Although the bird was probably on the ground when it did that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that some birds were on the ground and maybe let loose. But obviously we know that some were in the air. Maybe the wind took them. We don't know.
Here we go. I found it. I knew I saw it earlier today, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!"
Yeah.
Is that it? Yeah. Look at that. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5.
Yeah.
Or more.
I love that picture in a weird way. I love that picture.
I'm totally gonna frame it and send it. I'm gonna get a poster size thing and be like, "This, you busted this phenomenon."
Stop.
So now, stop and take a look at that picture. The lower left is what would be. So the fish would have been eaten head first. Okay. So if you notice that the upper right is what's most digested.
Yes.
And the bottom left is what's least digested.
Yes.
So that just goes to show that, and it came up in the opposite direction. So that also tends to suggest that we are looking at something that absolutely came from the gullet or, esophagus or stomach of a bird.
There you go. There's your gross picture of the week. People. Hope you weren't eating dinner when you. Hey, that's
Seen
awesome.
first here on Skeptical Health Bar.
Oh my goodness. Well, second.
Regurgitated
First,
fish.
it was on Sharon's website.
Second.
Which we totally stole from. But I mean, yeah, that was great. I saw that picture. I was like, oh, that's a new one. That
Yeah,
looks great.
I love that picture.
Yeah, it definitely goes in with the idea that you have here, and exactly what you said. Yeah, to digest it, and I love it. I love it. All right. So I think this mystery is solved, unless more information comes up that takes away from it. But I don't think there was going to be. I think this is pretty much. This is the best explanation.
It certainly seems to be. And, we're waiting for the results from University of Texas. Hopefully they'll get us something. And hopefully they will publish in a scientific journal.
Oh, that would be really cool. Yeah.
That'd be really cool. Yeah.
If they get those results. Yeah. We don't know what the results are going to look like, but
Right.
If they do get positive results, I think that's an important thing to publish.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is it's almost, it borders between not only the fringe stuff but folklore, and I mean it's all there. So this would be really cool to actually see it in publication, because I get what you're saying when you send it out as a press release and it's not getting as much traction as the original video, and that's I think that's our uphill battle.
Yeah. Although I thought for sure that people would like the story because it's gross and they tend to, share weird stuff like that. But like I said, we'll see. Usually the time frame for things like that do take a while. I mean, going back to Doubtful News, when I did Doubtful News for 7 years, or I think it's 7 years, it did get frustrating because then what I learned is how poorly the news media actually reports factual stories.
Yes.
They do a really shitty job of it.
Yes.
And they don't check with experts, and they don't check. It doesn't take them very long to pick up the phone and call an actual expert, but they'll get the call from the ghost hunter or the UFO person and take their word for it instead. And that really skews the narrative and not give you the more accurate information. And that's one of the reasons why I started Doubtful News and looking at weird news stories, because I saw, well, you're missing this, this already happened, and this is not a first time this happened. So I was able to put that context there simply because I was used to seeing these stories because I had collected them. Mm-hmm. And people aren't necessarily going to have heard about these weird things, but I did, and I knew that they weren't that weird, and I knew that sometimes they had a normal explanation. So that was my contribution. So I'm continuing to do that task these days.
I am so glad you are, because I miss Doubtful News. I know it was frustrating, and I remember seeing a lot of that frustration, like either when you were writing blogs or when I got to speak to you in person. I know that frustration, because it's so to see so much work put into finding an explanation, and you really dig and you get all that evidence and you put out there, and it's like, here I did all this work for you for free.
Yeah.
And the news, the general mainstream news, just wants the fluff piece, and it's so disheartening when you see that. But I'm definitely one that shared it, because I was like, yeah, damn right, I'm sharing it because this is awesome. This is beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
All right, I don't know. Should we do our pee break early, or should we get into some another topic? I mean, I love this. I think this is solved. I'm satisfied. So,
how about if just 5 minutes?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I want to tell people, if they don't know already, I kind of still do a Doubtful News light in a Substack newsletter each week. So I pull the best stories that I find, because I'm still looking for these weird stories all the time. I'm still trolling the news sites looking for the weird stories, and I put them all together in a newsletter. And it usually focuses a lot on animals and nature and weird weather and stuff like that. So if they're still interested in that, they can subscribe to my newsletter, or they could just read it online for free on my Substack site. Every week I try to collate the best. So I'm not doing the stupid ghost photos from the Daily Mail.
I'm doing
I'm
that.
not doing the dumb Loch Ness blobs that people are seeing. I'm trying to get the best, most interesting stories that you may have missed. I'm trying to put them together. And honestly, we all could kind of use a little break from the mainstream news because it's kind of hard to digest, no pun intended. So I try to do a little bit of more offbeat news. So I've heard some people say that they really enjoy that, and it is a break for them, and it is a sanity check because they need to get away from the scary real news and see some more interesting natural phenomenon.
Yes, I have a tendency to, especially recently with all the bullshit that's going on, and I mean, we're in Philly, the Philly area, so every morning, literally for the last week and a half, 2 weeks, every morning there's been shootings, and people dying, and it's like, I can't do this.
It's like every day.
I don't want to watch it. I don't want to look at it, and
that's the first thing you see in the morning. You don't want to wake up and see that,
But it's nice when, like, I grab my phone in the morning, I have my breakfast and I open it up and there's my email with my weekly weird news. And I'm like, oh, yes, weird shit. This is so awesome. And I mean, it's stuff like the latest one you sent out was like the huge stingray.
Oh yeah, it was great. The giant python. That was kind of scary. The giant python, kind of scary.
That's kind of because it's in Florida. Yeah. Like we already decided we're not moving to Florida.
No. I don't know. You're nuts if you move to Florida.
Yeah.
No, I can't do bugs. So I don't do that shit.
I agree.
No.
There's weird shit down there. I mean, too weird. Like I want to watch.
And not just the people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's really good newsletter. I really recommend everyone sign up for it because it's your daily dose of weirdness, and it's just cool little stories. And it's not going to take you hours and hours to read. They're short little clips, and it's perfect. It's like appetizers.
Yeah, and so if you're interested in that topic, you click on the link and you read the actual news story. But at least you have a context, and you can decide whether you want to go there or not. Some stories not so nice, Some things are pretty gruesome, and some of the stuff is kind of scary, for sure. But it's just a different take on something. Maybe something you just haven't seen, come through your news feed. So.
And people can, if they want to sign up for the newsletter, do they go to your spookygeology.com?
Yeah, they're all looking for the link.
It is my Substack site. So it's sharonahill.substack.com.
Okay.
And if you do follow me on Twitter, I have it there. So.
Okay. I will make sure I get that
in the chat.
Yeah,
we'll get it up. Chat.
We're going to take our break. So if you have questions, guys, and gals and everyone else in between, if you have questions, put them up. This is the time to do it. Put them in the comment section. Please put a Q in front of it. We're going to take our break, which is a 3-minute break so that we can empty some things and fill other things up. Not necessarily with the same thing.
Nice way to put it.
Yeah, thank you. So everyone, you have 3 minutes until we come back, and we're going to get into viewer questions, which is always fun because honestly, I didn't actually give you a warning beforehand. I have no idea what people ask. So it could be all over the spectrum here. I have no idea. So Donna's been collecting them, but if anyone have questions, this is the time to do it. We're going to go to break in 3, 2, and 1.
Do satanic cults lurk in the shadows? Can memories of satanic ritual abuse be repressed? Do exorcisms really drive out demons? And are those demons always possessing Zach Baggins? I'm JD Sword, the Satanic Skeptic. Join me on The Devil in the Details as I examine these questions and more, bringing a skeptical and satanic perspective to the paranormal. The Devil in the Details, available on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and more.
Shed hands for us. Shed hands for us. Hail Satan. Hail Satan. 3 tortured souls.
Are you tortured by what you see and hear about the paranormal field? Join us as we critically examine and question paranormal claims, science, ghosts, demons, cryptids, UFOs, ghost hunting technology, and much more are all on the table for discussion. 3 Tortured Souls is a video podcast that streams live on Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 Pacific.
3 Tortured Souls.
All right. How's it going? Good?
We're all good.
We're all good. I love that.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting on a squeaky chair. I don't know. Could you hear that?
I heard a squeak, and I thought
Only when you
someone
move.
like. tooted.
So I have this ergonomic chair,
Yeah.
and it's great for your back, but it's wood, so it like moves.
So does it have a backing?
No,
So it's just a stool.
Well, let me show you.
Oh, we're gonna learn together. I
Yeah.
love it. Oh.
It's
It's
so
one of those. So you
Yeah,
put your
it's
knees.
like a
Okay.
rocking chair.
Is that-
Put your knees on it. It's one of those like Scandinavian pieces of furniture.
Is it
And they're
comfortable?
brilliant. What's that?
Is it
It
comfortable?
takes some getting used to.
Okay.
It
but
looks
it's-
like it would be.
It's very good for your back because I had trouble like with standard chairs that would hurt my back and like pinch your sciatic nerve. So
Yeah.
but it's because it's flexible and you can move, it does tend to crack.
Penny, I need one of them for our office here.
It's great. It's
maybe
better
for-
than one of those balls, those
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I would
yeah.
fall. I would just
Yeah,
bounce
I
around.
That's too much work.
Sometimes by the end of the show, I would not be
You'd
able
be
to
falling.
film it.
Even falling off the ball.
Depending on who we have.
You would
Like-
need one of the bouncy things we used to have that you had the handle. Kenny
Oh
would
my
have to hold
God.
on.
Oh, I love those.
What were they called?
They're I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Look
we
at
I
had
this.
the handle, which
Yeah,
bounced around.
You bounced
It was
around.
like a workout. Oh,
Yeah, they were great. Boy, I love those.
oh my goodness. All right. So I totally want to pimp your book out before we go to questions, which I have right here. Conveniently, I have right here.
And guess who took the pictures for that book?
I don't know who took your pictures.
Yeah.
Kenny Biddle.
I did. It was so cool, so cool. You know what? I gotta tell you, like when you were doing this book, when you were writing it, and you had it written, and then you sent. I don't know how it came to be, but we were talking about it, and you asked if I would do the pictures for you, and I was like, oh yeah, tell me what you want. And I think you sent me like ideas, not ideas. You're like, this is what the chapter's about. You figure it out. And I'm like, okay, this would be
You did a
fun.
great job.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I got to make UFO photos.
Yeah.
I got to make shadow people photos and stuff.
There's a great picture of you acting like Bigfoot
Yes.
in there. That was great.
I love it. It was so much fun.
Hoppity hop.
Hoppity hop.
That was the ball. Hoppity hop.
I never was able to get one of those things, but they were really cool. Yeah.
I don't
Now
think
they have them at Five Below for $5.
I'd be a little bit self-conscious about using that in my yard. Yeah, hopping around.
They have adults. They have adult ones on Amazon.
Yeah.
They're
You know what I'm getting this
$25.99.
weekend? You know what we're gonna get this weekend? We're gonna get these damn things.
Look at Kenny. It's got a big emoji on it.
Oh,
You need one.
Oh
You need
my goodness. All right. Before I have to buy some silly, there's gonna be video this weekend sometime of me on there.
We need two so we can bounce together. Sharon froze.
Oh, she froze.
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
But yeah, the book was out in like what 2016, 2017, something like that, and it sold okay. It isn't for everybody, so you don't write those kind of books to make any money, obviously.
Right.
But I would gladly give it for free to people who want it. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get it out there as the one opportunity to talk about how amateur paranormal researchers are trying to do sciencey things and why that it's mostly bad, but it can be good. It's a little bit of good in there. They're trying. So
yeah, and you go over it. I mean, you really go over it, and that's one of the things I like. You were not scornful. You were saying, no, this was wrong, and this is what needs to be improved. And
yeah,
it's a good book all around. So I definitely suggest get it, people, if you're interested in this kind of stuff. And I've recommended it before. Like I've done my top 5 books that I recommend to people, and it's been on this list because I just like it. It's that it goes to the beginning. It goes to the amateurs and the beginners that are looking into it. Like, what should I do? And that's why I like it. And that's why,
because they got a lot of bad advice from TV people on how to do things.
Yeah,
but there is a way that they can do things and actually contribute. So
right,
yeah,
right. All right. So let's get to some questions here. Let's see what kind of weirdness we got here.
Okay.
I see a lot of familiar names in the chat. Hi, everybody. Nathan is a familiar name.
Are earthquake lights reports limited to atmospheric observations, or might it be interesting to observe the water near a fault line under, say, Tokyo Bay during an earthquake? Asking for a friend.
Yeah, so there have been reports of underwater lights, which are really interesting. And I think that that's perfectly plausible. If earthquake lights are plausible, then underwater lights might be plausible as well. They tend to be, there's a couple different ideas about earthquake lights. One is ionospheric coupling. So it's kind of complicated. I'm not sure how to explain. So when the electrons or ionized air gets passed up through the fault line, the fault zone, and they exit, they can be transmitted very quickly up into the ionosphere, a level of the atmosphere. And there is some evidence, particularly from the Russians, that have seen a very strange anomaly in the ionosphere before a very large quake. This has not been well documented, but I think it's kind of interesting. So the idea that the ionosphere, a very high level of the atmosphere, reflects something that's going on deep in the earth, if this is the case, that's really interesting. But I don't know how credible that is. There's ionospheric disruptions that happen for other reasons, and they happen diurnally. So I mean, like day and night, they get disrupted because of sunlight. So it's a really they're this complicated system. I think that's what we're looking at. It's a complicated system. Why are these things happening if they are happening, and how can we predict them? But yeah, the faults that are under the water are still going to transmit that ionized material. I don't really know what happens to that, but it is quite a curious thing, and it has been reported of lights underwater. particularly in, I'm trying to think areas where this has happened. I can't off the top of my head, but obviously there are a lot of areas where the fault lines go offshore. This doesn't really happen very much in California because of the way that the fault is structured. It's a strike slip fault. Really happens when there's thrust faults. So in places like Japan, which is where Nathan is. So
what's the difference between the faults?
A strike slip fault is when the faults are just sliding past each other. So the two plates are sliding past each other. Thrust, the subduction zone is when the plates are, one is diving underneath the other. So you're creating much more of an issue and a very long trail of stress that's going underneath the plate. And in particular, earthquake lights have been noted in areas of what's called grabens. So the fault is a fault where there's an extension and the block is dropping and the two areas on the side are moving apart, and the fault is the piece is dropping in between. Sorry, I'm getting really technical here, but
like a wedge.
This is how geologists talk. It's like grabens and thrust faults and stuff like that.
I love it. This is great. We don't get to talk about this much, so. Yeah.
In Canada, there is a graben there that had these earthquake lights manifest in a very dramatic way. And if you go on my Spooky Geology site and you read the earthquake lights entry, you can read about it, and it seems really, really credible what was reported. And it was in a site where it feels like the graben scenario of a closed system where the fault is a normal fault and it's dropping, that could create the situation that results in earthquake lights. So yeah, interesting stuff.
I love that. And I'm posting a link. I found the earthquake lights on your site, so I'm going to post that so people can see that. Hey, Dr. Jim, can you go over the differences between earth lights and quake lights in more detail?
Yeah, so when I talked a little bit about Paul Devereaux's book, Earth Lights Revelation, and he does break it down a little bit between the difference between earthquake lights, something that's related to a fault zone, versus earth lights, which just happen to appear, particularly over mountaintops, which I think is really curious. And this also happens on the Brown Mountain Lights,
right?
Hessdalen. So you're seeing maybe an electrical phenomenon that's happening at the top of mountains, where the electrons are gathering, and maybe there's an electrical storm above that is pulling those, you're getting the contrast of the negative ions and the positive electrons interacting with each other and creating sort of a glow.
Okay.
So there is things like mountain glows that end up happening. And those things I think are pretty well established that they actually do happen, and they're meteorological atmospheric phenomenon. Earthquake lights, however, are still very mysterious and unknown. Earth lights, like I said, can be anything. They've been confused with ghosts. They've been confused with UFOs. There's a really good book that I cannot remember the name of it right now. It's out of print. When I got a copy of it, from one of my a library out of state. I was able to do interlibrary loan, which is the greatest thing ever, right? And get a copy of this one book on, I'm having a senior moment. I don't remember exactly where it was, but it was about this phenomenon of earth lights that was taking place in this mountain range. And I actually just scanned the whole entire book, which I wasn't supposed to do, but I did anyway because I wanted to keep it. And the whole story was about how people were explaining these mountain lights that were occurring, or the glow on the mountain, but then the ball would come down into the valley and follow people as they were driving through the valley. So it seemed like it had sentience. And you hear a lot of places around the country where they have typical incidents of earth lights. So the Marfa lights, for example. There's another one, I think, in Illinois. So there's a couple places around the U.S. in particular that have these earth light phenomenons appearing regularly. It ends up being almost probably going to be an atmospheric phenomenon of headlights reflecting in, like the headlights are in on a higher level, but then there's a valley in between, and then the lights look like they're floating. It really looks like an atmospheric phenomenon. So the Earth light phenomenon in general could be a number of different things that we're looking at there, not just one cause.
Okay. Interesting. So when you mentioned about the lights following people, are we talking like a matter of feet that they're reporting, or is this miles, or just unknown because you can't tell the difference?
Yeah, it's really hard. When things are in the sky,
right,
you lose that sense of depth.
Okay, so I think that's what I wasn't sure about. Like, it almost sounded like are the lights coming down onto the road? Like, all I kept thinking is Close Encounters of bird kind when it comes down.
People have all these kinds of stories. Okay. So there's been a lot of cases where people say, well, the light is just looks like it's following them. Like it could be Venus, who knows? Or some people report that it has passed their car, or they see it keeping speed with the car. And so there's a lot of different things that you could potentially say is happening there. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's paranormal or unusual or anomalous.
Oh, smoking or drinking going on.
Unfortunately, we do always have to keep that a consideration. People are making the story up. I mean, I do love to interview them. I don't say that outright. I want to make that clear. I never say it outright that people are just making shit up.
Yeah.
But that is something that we always have to keep in the back of our mind. Like, all right, maybe.
Right. When I read a lot of these stories, it feels like they come to the story with the frame of reference already. Maybe they believe in UFOs. Maybe they believe in something spiritual, and you could tell that that's kind of imprinted on the way they tell the story. But usually they've had some sort of weird thing happen to them, and it may become weirder because of their predisposition to believe in certain things.
Right.
But they had some sort of experience, and I'm sure that it has some sort of explanation, but it could be a number of different things. And we really can't tell because we weren't there in the moment has passed.
Right. And then that's something I preach. Preach. We weren't there, and they had some kind of experience. Something happened. We just don't know. And let's talk about it a little bit more. Let's see if we can get some details. And of course, what I love to do is actually go to the site. I would go with them to the site and say, let's start to line this up. All right. Next question. What do we got?
We have
question. Has, I guess, Sharon looked into the Skinwalker Ranch mystery?
Well.
Here we go.
The thing about the Skinwalker Ranch is there's so much there. It's just a melange of just so much stuff. Everything you could think of: poltergeists, UFOs, cryptids, earth energies, all sorts of crap. It's all in that one site, and it's just too weird to be, I wouldn't say true, but it's too weird to be as they say it is. There's something going on there. I don't watch the TV show. I didn't read the book. I am curious about it, and I kind of want to cover it for Spooky Geology eventually in terms of high strangeness areas, because that is one, and why people believe it might be a high strangeness area. The whole Uinta Basin is known for being spiritually weird. It has a lot of native stories, and I'm not sure how true those are, and it's hard for me to tell if those are true or not because I'm outside of that culture. So it's just a whole pile of stuff all blobbed together. I don't know where to approach it from. It's so weird. I'm not sure where to start.
Yeah, it's difficult. I've done it on my Saturday night show. We talked about it because Saturday night show is with the two other guys, and we pick a topic, and the three of us go at it from different perspectives and try to look into it. Not trying to debunk anything. We're trying to figure it out. What's going on. Right. And I did, as part of my research, I watched several episodes of the TV series, and I'm extremely sorry that I did.
Yeah.
It made me angry, because they were all over the place and very staged scenes. And I mean, obviously staged scenes, and then really just bad science, like almost deliberately. And I think maybe it's the TV show and the producers and the editing, but it was just really bad. And I really regret it having to go through that. But then again, I wanted to see what they're putting out there. And
I had the exact same experience watching The Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch, which is similar.
I don't think I've heard of that. What is that?
It's not as popular, but it's definitely, you could see the parallels to the whole Skinwalker Ranch thing. So this is a couple of guys, a small family who is digging into some area at this ranch where there's actually caverns underground, and they found some things buried in the caverns. And for sure, they found things buried in the caverns, but it's not paranormal. I think actually the reason why I watched it is because they have a geologist on staff, and I had the same reaction as you. It just made me angry how poorly they did the science of this. When he picks up something and it's like, I don't know, this is an alien metal or something. No, idiot, it's galena. You could tell what it is just from the television. You know what that is? It was so frustrating that they're really taking advantage of the non-scientific viewer.
Right. And that's sad.
It is really sad, and it's very annoying.
So do they do that on the Curse of Oak Island?
I've never watched that show.
Oh, Sharon, you're killing me.
Oh man,
I can't watch it.
I had to ask. I was hoping you at least saw one episode, because I think they're pretty good on there.
Every fucking show they find something.
I know.
Like 2 inches underground. That's it. They're going over Metatech. Oh, look, this thing, we just found this, and it's from like 3,000 years ago.
No, they dig deeper. It's not 2 inches.
It's 2 inches.
It is not.
They don't have anything more than like a little spade.
You haven't watched it.
I hate that fucking show.
They've done more
They've
scientific
done more acting.
research. No, you haven't watched it lately.
More acting and overblown sciencey shit than any other show.
I don't think so.
I mean, I can't say any other show, because I mean, most of them are just all grouped together in that.
How many seasons are they up to like now?
Way too many.
Yeah.
No, they're getting it. Next year is going to be the big year.
Sure it is.
Last year was.
That's what they told the producers.
Oh, I mean, I honestly. Oh, I don't want to talk about the show. Why do you want to talk about the show?
Sharon is the perfect person to ask.
I watch it, and
this kind of, this TV crap is really influential. I'm sorry to say, I don't know if you remember, but I used to keep a list of all these paranormal TV shows.
Yeah.
And I had to stop at 2011 because they just so many of them just appeared, and then they went straight to like Amazon Prime Video, or they went straight to YouTube. So what is a show at that point? I wasn't really sure. And there just happened to be 20 channels that seem to be dedicated to these types of fake science shows that I just said I can't do it anymore. I can't keep track. It's too big for one person to handle.
I just get so annoyed. And then I also have this twinge of, I feel sorry for them, because if these people, especially on that show, they're dedicating their lives to this, and it's just such bullshit.
It is really sad. Think about the ghost hunters.
They are following evidence.
No, I don't think they are. I think they're creating evidence. They're creating evidence in order to keep the show going and to keep hope alive. I don't think
they're just seeing anomalies and using that to reinforce their beliefs to keep going. They've got so much invested in this. And I see this a lot with Bigfooters too. Like so much invested in it, they're never going to say, okay, I give up. They're never going to do it.
It's more like any lifeline. Any lifeline. Oh, there it is. I have a lifeline. I'm going to hang on to that for this show. And She's all sad.
We're sorry, Donna.
Guilty pleasure.
It's okay.
It's
I'm
just-
still going to
it's a shame.
watch it.
All right, let's move on to another question. Maybe we'll get happier. I mean, maybe you'll get happier.
I'm fine. I'm fine.
What is the strangest phenomenon you reported on, or top 3? Oh my,
That's hard. Yeah, that's
got
really hard.
years of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know about that one. I mean, I think that Earth lights are really strange. I really love that topic because mainly I think there's something to it. So it ends up it resonates with me
Right.
that I hear their stories and I think, oh boy, it's not a ghost. It's not something that they expected. It's not something that they came with a preconceived idea. Like a ghost, you have somebody go into a haunted house and experience something ghostly. Well, then you can chalk that up to a preconceived notion. But when somebody experiences an earthlight, and I remember this, so I did a podcast one time where the host told me that he was walking home one night, and this is in the UK, and he saw a glowing light in a golf course that he was walking by. And it was just a glowing light that was there that seemed to come out of the ground and move very slowly. And he was perfectly serious with me. And he was like, I just don't know what that was. That was just so strange. And he could never explain it. And to me, it was a really credible story. And it wasn't a story that you would, go and tell people about, that would impress them, because it wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a UFO. It was just something that was so mundane at the moment, but didn't have an explanation. And those are the kind of stories that really get to me. So I really like those types of stories. I always like cryptids. I think that the Bigfoot phenomenon really fascinates me still. People are experiencing weird things in the woods. I don't know what those are. I don't know what's happening there. But they're experiencing the Bigfoot phenomenon. Whether they're experiencing a real Bigfoot, probably not. But why are they having these experiences? So I love the idea that people are having these odd incidents in their lives and interpreting them in terms of whatever the popular culture version of that at the time. And whether or not they really saw a Bigfoot or not, it's almost beside the point, because they have really been personally affected by it. And that's fascinating.
That is what fascinates me. I love getting into why. Why do you interpret it that way? Like, tell me, let me understand how you're coming to that conclusion. And it's fascinating. And you get all kinds. I mean, so many different explanations on why they come up with that idea. And some are just like, well, it's a Bigfoot. I saw it. That's it.
Yeah. And that's the only frame of reference they had, though.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a woodland spirit or the guardian of the forest or something like that. No, because that's not the culture that they've been raised with. They've been raised with the media message that there's Bigfoot out there in the woods.
Right.
Wild. So I think that's truly interesting. So a lot of what I've done with the book, I realized, and then doing the work subsequent to that, was it's very sociological. So you're not necessarily looking at a natural phenomenon. You're looking at people's reaction to an incident that they interpret in a certain way. So there's a lot going on.
That's awesome.
I wish I could give a better answer about the most strangest things. A couple of years ago, I thought that I would put together all my best stories from Doubtful News into a book, and I don't know if I'll ever get to do that. But there's so many good stories that came out.
There's a lot. I'm looking at it. I have it up on my screen over here, and I'm looking at it. So I have two that I love. Good. Two of my favorites are when you talked about the stone tape theory. And you did not only an article, but you did a video on it too, I think. Yeah. You did a video, and that inspired me to watch the movie, The Stone Tape. We actually had a Three Tortured Souls is the Saturday show that I do. That's the name of it. and we do a movie night once in a while, and that was one of our movies. We sat with everybody, listeners came in, and we had a Zoom call where we played the movie and watched it. And it was so fascinating to see these concepts that I'm used to seeing with all the amateur ghost hunters, like using and presenting as fact. I'm like, this was in a movie.
It was a movie. It's real.
This is like the precursor to Ghostbusters. This is a movie that people are taking these ideas from. It blew my mind, and I loved it. I loved it.
Nigel Neal was a fantastic screenplay writer, and that is a great movie. I just love that movie. It was really hard to see in the U.S. for a long time. Blake Smith was able to get me access to it, so I was able to see it, and I was just floored. Same as you, just floored by that movie. So no geologist had ever looked at the idea of the stone tape, ever, as far as I knew. So I had to do it.
Damn right.
I did. And I remember giving a talk to my local geologic society, one meeting. And normally those talks are very technical and rather dry. And I was scheduled for the Halloween, the October edition of the Geologic Society meeting. I said, look, this is going to be something completely different. And they really enjoyed it, and they had no idea that people actually believed this stuff.
I
had like a whole selection of weird geological ideas, and they were just floored. They could not believe that people actually believed this stuff.
Yeah, I was able to order. I had the DVD of the film, and we watched it. And I suggest anyone. I mean, I think it's free on YouTube now, so yeah, definitely watch it, and you'll be amazed at the concepts that are presented in this film that translate, directly to what we hear from like various paranormal enthusiast.
You will be amazed at the computer technology in the movie.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. The printer paper, the dot matrix.
Yep.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yes, some of us are old enough to remember that very well.
I was an accountant at month end. Oh my God. The printer ran for like 12 hours straight, doing all the reports for the month. Oh.
And the other one that really stands out to me is your story about the curse of the Souvenir Rocks.
Yeah.
Souvenir stones. Because that's it resonated with me because I went to the Bell Witch Cave down
God. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we went down. Yeah. And got in there, we took the tour, and towards the end of the tour guide's like, so there was a curse here, and because of the alleged Native Americans that were in this cave, which further research shows that they weren't, they're like, if you take a stone from this cave, you're cursed by the Bell Witch, and bad things will happen to you. And then it was like the whole, well, we're not telling you to take stones from it.
Right.
And I mean,
we're not going to tell you
everything. Yeah, exactly. We're not going to tell you. And as soon as they said that, I'm like, all right. Taking pocket. My pockets were full of stones.
I was telling. I'm like, would you stop? Like, what are you doing?
So I took a whole bunch, and then they're telling us like, oh, people will send them back. They always send them back with letters saying, bad things have happened to them. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you freaking primed them.
Right. As soon as something goes wrong, I'm going to send the rock back.
But after reading your article, this is something that is pretty, it's common.
Yeah, I had only ever heard about it with regards to Hawaii. Because I remember when I was in high school, my friend went to Hawaii, and I said, make sure you bring me back a rock. And she came back empty-handed. I'm like, dude,
my rock.
I can't. There's a curse on the rocks. I can't bring it back. And I was so angry with her. But when I started to do that article, I realized that it initiated with the petrified forest pieces. So in Arizona, the petrified forest was the original origin of that curse story, which I was really surprised because I didn't know that. And it was funny because like the next week, my daughter was there in Arizona at the petrified forest site. And I'm like, that's interesting. See if people pick up rocks or not. And what it is you cannot take a rock from any national park, national site, whatever.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to do that. There's reasons, and you're not supposed to do it. So, the first rock is so widespread. It's actually hard to get your arms around about how many different kinds of ways that a rock can be cursed. So that again, that just falls into the umbrella of spooky geology. Is why?
Yeah.
Why are we afraid of pieces of rock? That can they embody something? Can they embody, like with the stone tape, can they hold a memory? Can they hold an emotion? Can they hold like a replay of traumatic experiences? Can a rock hold a curse? Can it hold a spirit? So like people in some cultures would believe that spirits inhabited rocks. And or if a god came down, he would embody the rock. And it was just, there was just so much here that was interesting. And it's sometimes it's hard to write these snippets of posts because there's so much going on at all aspects, because it's folklore related, so it evolves constantly. Right. And there's a whole lot of stuff that it's worked into it.
So before we go on to other questions, I have questions that come up. And so one of the main, I guess, rocks that come up in paranormal stories is quartz and also limestone.
You notice I'm mouthing because I knew exactly what you're going to
say. And you know what? This is funny because we talked about this the first time I met you in Gettysburg. The first time we got together, because I forget, what were we doing? We were just walking around looking for ghost hunters, and there they were. Oh, and then you showed me like the dinosaur prints on the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
So, so much fun. But yeah, you were talking about, and you were actually looking at samples of rocks, and it was so much fun because, like, you go to Gettysburg, and I'm used to the history and different aspects of it, but here I am with someone that was like freaking out, like in a good way, like nerding out over the rocks. And I'm like, this is fascinating.
I love the geology of Gettysburg. It's really fascinating because it had, not only is it personally interesting because there's a dinosaur footprint there,
right.
It's diabase, so it's volcanic, intrusive rock there, which is super interesting. But the geology of the place had such an effect on how the battle played out, which is something that I had been through with my professors. I would go there, would learn from them, and saying, this is why the battle played out the way it did, because of the geology of the site, which is fascinating to me. There's lots of papers written on it. So the main idea of the ghost hunters that go to Gettysburg is that the quartz in the rock has preserved the emotional trauma that took place during the days of the battle there. Oh. And that's why we see the replay of what people say are the battles, or you see the soldiers come out, ghostly images of the soldiers replaying, because the quartz has somehow recorded and plays back this incident. Well, oddly enough, if you actually look at the rock at Gettysburg, it's amazingly quartz poor. More so than usual. I mean, you can go around any place you get to a sandstone, and it's got lots of quartz in it. There's some sandstone in Gettysburg, but for the most part, the valley there and the major areas like the Devil's Den, where people say they have these experiences, is diabase, and diabase is absolutely missing quartz, and it doesn't have limestone because limestone is a sedimentary rock. It's usually marine, so there's nothing like that there. There's no limestone there at all. So there's no quartz, there's no limestone. What are people talking about? They're talking
maybe
about
that's what it is. That's why it isn't quartz and it isn't limestone. That's why Gettysburg's so special, and that doesn't happen anywhere else.
It happens in lots of places. I'm not gonna get there.
Yeah, man.
Oak Island guys come in; they'll figure it out.
All right, you're welcome for asking
seasons.
that question, guys. That aren't right on that end.
That's a sore spot with us.
Diabase is one of my favorite rocks, and I don't know why, but it's just a beautiful pyroxene amphibole, very nice black rock that they actually mine for tombstones in some of the areas. And I think what happened there is sometimes it's colloquially called black granite.
Colloquially.
So in a general sense, it's called granite, and it's black granite, and it's not granite. Technically, it's not a granite because granites contain a lot of quartz. It's not a quartz granite. It's almost like a basalt. So I haven't heard that word in a while. Interesting. If you want to get into the geology, it's the way that the crystals form as the rock cools, depending upon the environment that they're cooling in, and certain minerals drop out first. And diabase is it weathers into these beautiful boulders and these round pieces, and I really like it. And it's usually associated with the Jurassic period, where sometimes you find these dinosaur footprints in the adjacent sandstone. So I really think that's cool.
So is that why Devil's Den is the way it is? Is that what those big rocks are?
Yes, those are diabase, and they weather in a very spheroid sense.
Yeah,
so
they do.
Come off in a spheroid way. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Devil's Den.
I learned some.
Sharon's got a whole section of devil places on her website.
I do.
I love it. I was going to bring it up.
Yeah, devil place. That's one of my most popular posts.
It is really cool because every place has. I'm totally taking away from the viewer questions, but it's so much fun. I don't get the chance to talk to you so much. So this is so fascinating. But yeah, like Devil's. The first thing I thought of was Devil's Den because it's Gettysburg and we've been there. But right by the house I grew up in Northeast Philly, we had a Devil's Hill. And it seemed like every kid has a devil's something that they grew up with. And this was a hill that was just a very steep hill that us kids would ride our bikes down, and usually halfway down we tumble. Yeah, we never make it down. No one would make it down to the bottom on their bike. And that was Devil's Hill because that was the devil pushing us off. Because he's a prick. But I started reading that. I was like, this is fascinating. Like every place has some kind of devil inspired name.
And I couldn't even include them all. There's so many.
So many. All right. So I'm gonna stop because I'm taking away from the viewers. Let's get to the next question from the viewers. But go check out the website. And it says devil places. All right, John Kennedy. Would you give a short list of some book suggestions?
Book suggestions. Okay, good question. Oh, so let me see. I gotta pull up my web. Oh crap! It's asking me to log into my own website. I do have a list on the Spooky Geology website of places of recommended reads. So some of the things I have on there. So there are actually a number of good scientific-based books on geological mysteries and stuff. The number one book I really liked was Legends of the Earth by Dorothy Vitaliano, and it was one of the earliest books. It was 1977, and she talks about and sort of instituted the idea of geomythology. So geomythology is explaining certain specific myths and legends in terms of actual geologic events. And so you have ideas about the natives of North America having in their lore a giant explosion of a mountain. Well, it turns out that around that time that they are talking about it is when this volcano actually exploded. So we can look back in the past and listen to folklore and maybe get some ideas about what actually happened in nature. Really love that book. Super entertaining to read. Ley lines in question. Ley lines came up as the I don't know what the words you want to use for the Ghostbusters reboot in 2016. With the ley lines paranormal power. I was just floored when I saw that movie and I saw that ley lines were part of the movie. Ley lines in question, great book, The Definitive History of Ley Lines. Actually, what was a very non-paranormal idea when it first was originated in the UK ended up being hijacked by paranormalists and turned into something really, really freaky and weird.
That's the topic of our show tomorrow night.
Yeah, ley lines.
Ley lines.
Ley
I haven't
lines?
started my research yet, but yeah, we're going to talk about that.
I guess you need to talk to Sharon after the show.
There's a lot there.
What are you doing tomorrow night? You want to hang out with us? You don't have to.
Yeah,
I would, but yeah. So
Kenny's
ley
bringing
lines-
you on to do his homework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just read my
The other two
notes,
guys-
because there's a
the
lot
other-
there.
The other two guys do research, and I'm like, yeah, I brought Sharon.
I brought Sharon. She's going to help us out here.
Any question come up? Sharon. Right there.
I looked to see if ley lines actually did have a scientific basis. So maybe people were seeing what was called fracture traces on the surface because of differential weathering and water paths and things like that. Turned out no. People were just drawing lines between things, between points on the ground. What a mess. I'd also recommend. Oh my gosh, there's so many books. There's a really good book by Yvonne Vaught and Ray Hyman about water witching, which is dowsing. What a fantastic book that was. I really love that book. Water Witching USA it's called.
That's what you're
So it was the scientific response to, dowsing, and what a fantastic book that was. I really enjoyed that one a lot. So those are just three I'd throw out for you.
Awesome.
It's Ray Hyman's birthday today.
Oh, yes.
No way!
Yeah. Happy birthday,
Yeah, I
Ray.
saw it, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had a chance to sit down with him
Yeah.
and have breakfast one time in.
Oh,
in
he's
Scottsdale,
amazing.
Arizona. It was so nice.
He's
What a great
such,
guy.
I don't say this about too many people, but he is such an adorable little man.
Yes. Oh,
He is.
we
He
are
is
so
like
fun.
Yes.
grandpa. He reminds me of a grandfather that would just take you in and tell you whatever story you needed to hear.
Right.
He was so
very
sweet.
good guy. Yeah.
Yes, very
Happy
sweet.
birthday.
I did put the link to the books, the book page in the chat room. So anybody wants to check that out and order some books, which I will be doing later tonight. But yeah, awesome. All right. What do we got next? Dr. Jim, not to get into the metaphysical, but you are. But I wonder if the zones of the uprush of ions and such around mountain peaks affected the, what is that?
Gurus.
Gurus and prophets.
Oh, okay. I didn't read further in that question. Guru prophets that all seem to prefer mountaintops.
I think there's like a rarefied air up there on the mountaintop where you're away from the noise of the valleys. But the idea of mountaintops is pretty cool. So there's a lot of weird things that go on mountaintops. I'm reminded of the Brocken Spectre. Like when you go walking up the mountains in Scotland or various places and you see the fog behind you.
Oh yeah.
And you turn around and there's your shadow, but you don't think of it as a shadow. It just looks like this giant moving thing behind you.
Yes.
And that's such an emotional experience that people have, that even when they know it's their shadow, they can't believe it because it's just so huge. It's like this giant. It's the giant man of McDewey and the Brocken Spectre and the various names they have for them.
The first time I saw that, like I had no idea that existed, but we saw, ironically, it was Paranormal Caught on Tape, that really awful show, but it showed a clip and I was looking at it and we were both looking at it like, that's huge, but that's the woman that's taking the video. Like you can see her movements are matching the movements of this thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's her. And eventually, they did tell us it was her, but I was like, wow, that's a really cool phenomenon.
So when you're in nature and you experience those things, you're not expecting it. And I don't know that your brain can really make the physical calculations to figure it out, but it's such a personal experience. I would love that. But I think that happens a lot when people are out in nature, maybe like on a mountaintop away from civilization, that you feel, the silence affects you, or the difference in the air affects you. People aren't out in nature enough. They really need to be out in nature to get into the woods, to get into the mountains and feel that we are connected to the landscape. We are connected to the earth, and what we do to the earth affects everybody. And it sounds very hippy dippy to talk about it, but I really feel that way, that we are disconnected from nature. We see that in the news stories that come out of people who can't recognize animals that come through their backyard because we are so disconnected from nature anymore. And I think that that's detrimental to society, that we aren't, experiencing nature like we should.
You need to get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
You need to get in there and just
get in the dirt, pick up the rocks, breathe the clean air, sit in silence for a while. Yeah.
And relax. Yeah. Put your phone away. You know?
What? Kenny Biddle said, "Put your phone away." Of all people. Oh my God.
I don't have my phone now.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But
I can't believe you just said
that. I get
that.
it.
It's funny.
I totally, I'm totally on board with that. I love the whole boots on ground thing. You know, like I want to get into it. I want to, and that's one of the things. Like when we hung out in Gettysburg, it was fascinating watching you get so excited about the rocks, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool.
Oh gosh,
It's
a magical place to me, and I love to touch the rocks, and I love to pick up a rock, and I have a rock, downstairs that's 1 billion years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1 billion years old.
Well, it was like when we went fossil hunting with Aaron.
Yeah.
It was to see him get so excited over something that we thought was like a rock or a shell. Like it was just
we got these. I don't know what they're called. It was like I call it the butt bone of a squid. And it's a fossilized. Yes.
Yeah. We got a bunch of them.
We have a bunch of them on our porch now. And
nice.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I looked it up. I'm like, wow, these are like between 65 million and like 200, or I think I forget the other number, but at least 65 million years old. I'm like, wow, this is so cool, and it's just amazing.
If you have a little bit of knowledge, you feel like you appreciate these things a little bit more.
Exactly.
Like that dinosaur footprint on the bridge in Gettysburg.
Yeah, that was so cool. You told me that. I was like, wait, what? Dinosaur print? This is Gettysburg.
Put your hand into the
print.
And you're like, it's right on the bridge. I'm like, what? No, it's not. There's no dinosaur print. You show me. And
yep.
Damn it, she showed me. And it was like, wow, this is really This is awesome. I love it.
This is like a spiritual moment for us because we appreciate, deep time and nature, and I don't know. That's really cool.
I love it. All right, let's get on. We got. Ooh, wow. What would you say is one of the worst parts of your job?
Which job? I got lots of jobs. So yeah, I mean, I have a regular 8 to 4 job as a civil servant, and that's got some bad parts to it too, but good parts, I think the worst part is lately, people on YouTube in particular feel that they're experts because they've seen a video, and then they come and they say, "Well, it's just your opinion." You're just that's just your opinion. They don't recognize that, you put in 8 years worth of schooling and, hours and hours and hours, countless hours of research, trying to get to the best answer, try to weed out the bad information from the good. And they can come on and say, well, that's just your opinion. It doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So lately, the video that I have on Spooky Geology on YouTube about Devil's Tower has been getting the most traction out of all the videos because there is, I don't know if it started with TikTok or YouTube or whatever, where somebody proposed that Devil's Tower is the remnant of a giant tree stump.
That's a big freaking tree.
Take a moment to think about how stupid that is.
Yeah.
But, Devil's Tower is a bit of a mystery. It took a while for them to figure out actually what it was. They knew it was a volcanic remnant of some sort. But it probably never was a core of a volcano. It was probably always underground, and then everything kind of eroded around it. But we know that it was an intrusive rock. We can tell by the way it's formed. And these, half-bit doofuses come in and say, "No, I think it's a tree stump because it looks like it from far away." They've never gone up to the site. They've never looked at it. They know nothing about rocks. They know nothing about geology. They know nothing about the way that the earth works. But yet they're the ones getting the traction with these really awful claims. And it's super frustrating when people come on and, you know, you get crappy YouTube commenters. Everybody does. It's kind of a thing. But it is frustrating when you try to tell them, look, that's just wrong. And they don't want to even consider you. So,
yeah,
that sucks.
I completely understand. It really sucks. You do so much work and good, honest work that you can back up, and it's still, well, I want to see the cool ghost story. I want to see the weird shit, you know, that like, you know, it's a tree stump. Like what? I'm gonna get over. I know I'm gonna be watching TV later tonight and just going, fucking tree stump. No, it's big. It's big.
The Earth is. I mean, some of these explanations are really fascinating. The true explanations are really fascinating, but yet people have to go and invent fantastic crap instead, and that's frustrating.
Yeah. I believe that's the In Close Encounters. Yeah, you actually have that picture up on the article, which I'm posting in the chat room now.
Yeah, that was a fantastic thing that I found when I was researching that article, was that the people who did Spielberg's movie searched around for the perfect location to make for the alien landing space. And that was such an iconic landmark, so striking, that it was the perfect location. And it actually became like a character in the movie. It was such an integral part of the movie. They originally may have considered Pic de Bucarache, which is in, I think, France, as a similar type of massive mountain, volcanic mountain that had a lot of spiritual folklore around it. So they were definitely, well, I'm sure that's not that we're looking for that, but these striking landmarks tend to have these amazing stories associated with them.
Awesome. All right, next question. We're running out of time. We're down to less than 10 minutes. So let's try to follow up question.
What was the favorite?
What was your favorite thing about your job?
Discovering just interesting new things. I think I know something about one thing, and then I actually look it up, like the whole petrified forest thing. I had no idea about that. I had no idea how that got started. I had no idea about how the water spout fish story got started. It wasn't really meteorologists. It was something else. It was tabloids or whatever. So you never know what you're going to find until you look, and you need to look.
Right.
It's true.
Absolutely. All right. Cool. We're getting there. Have you ever looked into the Nazca lines? I'm just curious how the Native Americans did it. Or the gods.
The Nazca lines, I think, is interesting, is when the idea that people would use shaped paths along the ground as a spiritual journey. So they would walk these paths as a spiritual journey. Mm-hmm. And that was what was important. And that was the way they organized their thoughts and beliefs, by following this path in a ceremony. And I think that that's what the Nazca lines were used for. I don't think that they were used to depict pictures for the sky gods. Maybe they were. I don't know. But we know that they did follow these paths in ceremonies that commemorated their devotion to the gods. So it's just I haven't looked at that too much, because it's more archaeology than it is geology. But I love the shapes, and I'm sad that they're being destroyed by people who end up taking their four-wheelers over them.
Yeah, I saw that when that happened. That was really depressing.
Wow. It's heartbreaking. Yeah, and they also people destroy like petroglyphs and stuff like that. It's very disturbing.
There's also I know Joe Nickel did. He wrote some articles, but also did some kind of special where he demonstrated how to actually make one. I think he did the spider.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah. There's there was a picture in his office of him doing the big spider. So no aerial views. He did it all on the ground, and He told me the story many times. I love Joe. He's the grandfather I never had. And he always tells me that the producer came over and said, "Hey, this is really looking great. Do you want to come up in?" Because they had a crane camera. Do you want to come up in the crane and take a look at it? And he said, "No, it's not finished yet. I don't want to cheat. I will not do that." And he refused to go up and look at it, and he just completed the entire thing. It was big. So definitely check into that if you want more information on that too. I think we have one more question. Awesome. Did you always want to be in geology?
No. I couldn't decide if I wanted to look down at the ground or up at the sky. At one point, I thought I might want to be a meteorologist. And I will say that my dad always railed on the local weather person because they always got the weather wrong.
Yep.
So I'm thinking, dads and weather, that weatherman, he was wrong about the weather today. So I thought, that's not really a good choice. So I ended up my first love is animals. I really love zoology, and that's why cryptozoology is my really, the thing I love the most. But geology is my profession, and I do love rocks. So that seemed to be a logical path for me. But I love all nature sciences, other than the ones about people. I'm not so big on the ones about people. I like this stuff related to animals, plants, and rocks and things like that better.
People are much more difficult to get along with sometimes.
But like I said, that ended up in the book. It ended up being very sociological. So it just sort of happened that way.
All right. So we're done with the questions. We're at the end of the show. Where can people find more information about you and your work?
I do have my own link tree at Sharon A. Hill. So if you wanted to go there, but mostly SharonAHill.com will get you to anything that I do. So Spooky Geology is, I'd like to be more active on that, but it takes a long time to produce some quality stuff. So I'm not as active as I should be.
Yeah. And it's worth it though. Quality stuff is worth the wait. It really is. Even when I try to get something out that's like really current, it takes time.
It really does. People don't realize that.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. I'm going to do my announcements. You can hang out for a minute or so. So if
thank you, everybody. Thanks for
everybody had a great time. It looks like
they were having a great time. We had a lot of people watching, so it was so much fun.
And it seems like the chat actually was going along with the show. It didn't veer off too
Sometimes
much.
It veers off into topics that have nothing to do with the show, but it stayed on topic for the most part, which is really cool.
Thank you, Bob, for the humor.
Yeah, Bob was on fire tonight.
He was on fire.
All right, so if everyone enjoyed the show and you liked the whole series, you are welcome to visit my Patreon page, which is up that way. And the money actually goes right back into the show. Literally, it pays for the StreamYard subscription, and that's it. So
because I don't get paid.
I don't get paid. She don't get paid. I don't get paid. I do have announcements. So let's see. Saturdays at 8 p.m. Is Three Tortured Souls show I do with Tim Vickers and Dave Schumacher. Tomorrow we are doing Ley Lines, which should be interesting. I already know the other two guys, so we talk about this a lot. Me, Tim, and Dave, we continually chat throughout the week, and it's like nothing but complaints. Like, this is a bad topic. We don't want to do this, but people still ask me about it. They still ask, and they still have this belief. You tell them no, it's make-believe kind of stuff. And they're like, but what about this? And what about this? And so I want to do this show to get some of the where it came from, how it evolved, and get into that. So July 16th, 17th is Skeptical virtual conference. It's the California Skeptics. I'll be speaking July 16th about my kind of journey from ghost hunter to me, where I am now. July 23rd is the Para-Unity Conference in Woodbridge, New Jersey. I'll be up there. I'll be set up with my Skeptical Help booth with a bunch of toys like my little dowsing rod rig here that you can play with. You're welcome to play with. Donna will also be set up with her Lucky Tiki Creations, crafts and stuff like that. So you can come out, buy stuff from her, learn stuff from me. And August 19th to 21st, I'll be in Gettysburg for the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. It'd be great if you come visit, Sharon.
I shall try.
Drop by. But it will be, both of us will be out there. And then Dave and Tim are actually coming out. Tim is in West Virginia. Dave is somewhere else. I forget where he is, but he's coming out. The three of us will be together. We're going to do a live show from the conference and hang out. And then October 20th to 23rd, I'll be in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'll be speaking at SciCon about believers and skeptics working together. So not fighting, but how all of us, not just skeptics per se and believers per se, but everybody can work together with these mysteries and figuring out what's going on and helping each other out. So that's my announcements. And then otherwise, I will be back next Friday for another show and, more drinks, because that's what we do here. Let's see, get this out and get my video queued up here. Thank you so much, Sharon. Hang out after the video. Don't go away.
Right.
I hate that. You ever go on a podcast or a show like that and they're like, okay, that's it for a show. Click, boom, and you're gone. You're like, what? All right. Cool. So hang out. I'm going to play my outro video. Everyone else, have a great weekend. And remember, never stop learning. I'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.